Hello and welcome to another episode of Casual Friday. I'm here with the Duck. As always, the show is brought to you by Woo. Links available in the description below. Don, welcome back. We all missed you. I was grinding away hard on the content train, 3, 4, 5 videos a week while you were complacently on holiday. But now that you're back, thank you for gracing us with your presence.
My pleasure, my pleasure. I'm sorry for letting you down like that.
It's fine. It's nothing I'm not used to. Also, congratulations on the new kid that is on the way, the new addition to your family. I heard you shared that with your stream and with Twitter because that's an insane thing to do. But nonetheless, you're, one per year, Don, at this rate. If you extrapolate the maths, there's going to be a lot of kids in a few years.
Yeah. I mean, we have too little, and I decided to change it.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you literally doubled it, right?
So,
The
yeah,
maths is pretty impressive.
I
Yeah, dude,
mean,
that's awesome. Congratulations. When do you find out the gender?
I have no idea.
Sorry, the biological sex. No, the
Uh,
yeah, and then the
yeah,
show
I
gets
mean,
cancelled.
I think soon-ish. I don't know.
Okay,
I forgot how it was in the first one. I didn't ask this time. I'm just coasting.
nice. And how was your holiday trip?
I mean, given that my wife was pregnant, uh,
Yes.
in Japan, where it was like 30 to 35-degree weather. I don't know what that is in American freedom units, but it's hot. So she was kind of struggling, and therefore I couldn't really do too much because, I mean, your wife's struggling on a trip like that. Cannot really just leave her. Um, that was kind of like a little bit of a little sad thing, just because, I mean, we could have done so much more if not, but still enjoyed it greatly. Like, I love Japan. I could see myself like live there for 5 years, if I was younger and didn't have a family. Like,
Yes.
just like so cool. Like, such a different vibe to what we have here, and also like just generally a different vibe, right? I've been in America, I've been in Europe, I've been in Africa, and this kind of like, just from like how different it is, like that compares a little bit. Whereas like when you go to Africa, you're like, holy shit, like everything is so crazy different. If you go to America from as a European, it's not that big of a shock. But I did get that kind of culture shock going to Japan, but in a very different way than I had in Africa, where in Africa you're like, holy shit, like this is crazy. And in Japan you have kind of like, you show up and everything's working so well and everyone is so well behaved and all that kind of stuff, where like it's just so different on a very different, in a different kind of way. And I loved it. I wouldn't want to live there, honestly.
Right.
Like long term, but I would want to live there for a little bit, just because there's so much to see, so much to
You might have to
experience.
wait a little bit, Don, with your family planning or lack thereof.
Oh, I mean, it's not for me,
Yeah,
not in this life.
not in this
But
life. And you didn't bring me back any Naruto figurines, right?
I actually didn't. But I mean, I did get you one for your birthday like 2 years ago.
That's true.
So
Yes, 2 years ago. Yeah, for sure.
so
It's fine. We
I mean,
can.
you didn't get me anything for my
That
birthday.
is a
So
lie.
is it?
Yes, we'll fight about this offline. Market, Don. It's been a while. There's this time frame called the monthly. I don't know if you've read much about it or have ever looked at it, but it seems pretty important.
Oh yeah.
Monthly close is 3 days away, and it's going to be like the 18th close above 65k or above 58k rather, and it's around 65k at the moment. So I'll ask the question I've been asking for the last half a year, which is this the close that's going to send us?
I mean, it better. Like, before, we didn't really have a good reason to go up, but like with last month, like shaking out so aggressively, and there's something that we talked about before I went on holiday, and before you just miraculously disappeared. um, where it's like the market wiped out so aggressively that it's totally fair to just be like, okay, we've had the shakeout that we usually get, after like a long consolidation, and now we can go up. So if it doesn't go up now, then I think it's just gonna be like, if we break this support, I think it's gonna be another like lengthier bear market, where it's like 6 to 18 months of just chop at the lows. But I think there's a very, very high chance, and much higher than breaking it, that we're just going to go up from here. So I think we're in a good spot. But now that we've had all of the reasons to go down and didn't, and we had the washout and all of that, I think if we go back down there, it just looks bad for like the midterm, right? As in like a couple of months, you would expect shitty price action. So yeah, this is the month, or like last month was the month that set the low. Hopefully, if not, kind of have to assume that we're gonna get a lengthier, shitty price action bear market.
I mean, even by monthly time frame standards, this has been a real test of patience or sanity test of some sort, right? The argument always tends to be like, oh, if this were a 4-hour chart, you wouldn't blink at, 2, 3, 4-hour candles at the level before you actually get the move. And that analogy is often extrapolated to the monthly time frame, saying, oh, if you're trading the monthly, 2-3 months at the same level is the equivalent of 2-3 candles basically on a larger time period. But even using that argument, I mean, 6-7 months more or less in the same area is kind of crazy. Even if you're used to trading this time frame, it's been hasn't been much to show for it from like a swing trading perspective. Because realistically, if you're buying like 58k, 60k monthly, you're targeting like new all-time high breakout continuation type of stuff, right? And it's just been round trip after round trip. So there's always almost been more benefit in either just like buying it and logging off, or managing it very actively. And kind of treating it as a short-term level for short-term trading. I think if you've been stuck in the middle where you treat it as the monthly, but then you manage it on like the daily or the weekly, and you're just constantly opening and closing at more or less the same price, or not getting the impulse moves, that's a painful and expensive endeavor. And as we like discussing on this show, there's a real drain on your mental capital as well. There's only so many times you can trade the same level, trade the same range, get the same mean reverting outcome before you just lose your sanity entirely. And I think a lot of people are close, if not past that already.
Oh yeah. There's already been Twitter celebrity casualties, right? Like Cole stopped, I think. Did you see that on Twitter?
His Twitter account is gone. Yeah, I don't know if he disabled it or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I think he was playing into it to a certain extent. Like he quite liked being the bear main character type of thing. And, everyone's got a limit. I've never personally seen the appeal of deliberately trying to be the main character, at least certainly not on the bearish side. It's way more, the EV of being a bull-tard main character is much higher than being the bear-tard main character.
Yes.
Right? Like if you had to pick.
So much more fun.
Yeah. So, it's a brave mission, but not for everyone. So that's the monthly time frame. Basically still waiting room. Last month was probably the clearest 58k shakeout that you could ask for. And if that's not enough, then, I mean, the time frame becomes useless until until it either just fully clears this monthly consolidation from 58 to like 71 or 68, whatever, or if it full on collapses and breaks down, then you buy the high time frame nuke into the monthly. But yeah, it's just more of the same. I think the weekly time frame is the most interesting one at the moment. Are you inclined to agree with that view?
Yeah, I mean, it's at least the most actionable one. I think the monthly it might be the most interesting one, as in like, oh shit, we're at all-time high levels and we finally had the wipeout and everything. But actionable, not so much, whereas the weekly is a little bit more. So I think so, yeah.
Also, I don't know if you randomly heard that. My building has this like centralized smoke alarm thing, so it's not battery based, and so it's been beeping since yesterday on a building level, including for all of my neighbors.
Jesus.
And by neighbors, I mean the co-tenants in my mom's basement. And it's just simply the most infuriating thing in the world. So if I'm angrier than usual, you can understand why.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's terrible. I've
at night too?
Yes, at night too.
I've
sent some more passive-aggressive emails, which by British standards is like a declaration of war. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I heard it. Just
there you go. I've just ruined the viewing experience for everyone. Now that you've heard it, you can't unhear it.
Oh, God,
so weekly time frame, you said it's more actionable, Don.
Yeah.
For a while, a lot of the discussion recently has been about market structure. And we appear to be on the cusp of breaking it in one form or another, right? Like we had a sort of dodgy looking higher low on the weekly that came first. And in my view, that really wasn't, like I've seen a lot of reference made to it that, this is the weekly higher low. And obviously we're making a higher high now. I mean, this is like TA bullshit that really doesn't matter. But if you view it from like a line chart point of view, that low wasn't a higher low. If anything, the low around sort of July, August would have been the only argument for a higher low, but that one failed after making a lower high. So the most recent low in September I didn't think from a weekly market structure point of view, if you're looking at like bodies or closes, that's a kind of higher low type of argument. If anything, it just kind of retested the previous wick and traded back up. But purely from a market structure point of view, at least when it comes to the line chart or candle closes or whatever on this time frame, I find the argument that that was a higher low to be odd, because structurally it wasn't. And if anything, if you were betting on what the closest thing resembling a higher low, which was August, you probably got stopped out on that trade because we ended up trading lower in September. And in general, I don't know what your view on this is. When I'm looking at sort of trend reversing market structure, I didn't find the lows to be as useful as the highs if it's downtrending, and vice versa, right? So if it's making lower highs and lower lows, I think the stronger signal is generally on the higher high, kind of the counter trend impulse, and vice versa as well. If it's making higher highs and higher lows, I think the stronger signal is the impulse if it makes a lower low.
100% agree.
But now we appear to be in the process of making a higher high, right? Like if this weekly closes above, we can line chart this even, sort of the weekly close above 64K essentially, and there's like a daily level there, and it's all sorts of, there's all sorts of confluence around that sort of price level. That's going to flip a lot of systems to be long biased. So tell us about the weekly time frame, please, Don.
Yeah, I mean, you can make that argument like we're breaking the high right now, and I mean, obviously, at least for my system, and according to what you just said, pretty much to your system as well, like you have to close above it to actually kind of confirm it. But I kind of feel like to truly make like a new high, like break the market structure, you kind of still have to break 68K. And that's coming from me, like I'm bullish, but because you could argue that that part in the middle was just consolidation, right? Like that one green candle that we had, the 19th of August candle, was just like a little bit of like an aggressive up move, but just kind of like fake. And then you could argue it wasn't really like this new high isn't really that meaningful, because I mean we still made a new low, and we still haven't broken any of the highs prior to that one. But I'm just gonna ignore all of that and just be like, I have a decent entry. I'm just gonna be bullish, no matter what happens, unless it just starts breaking down. But yeah, market structure-wise, it's a little bit confusing, I think. I do agree with you. Like for me at least, the closes are the important part, because you can easily wick it up and down, and then you can always have like these illiquid wicks in either direction. But yeah, I kind of look at this and I'm like, market structure-wise, I'm not actually so certain this break is the important one. I see a lot of cheerleading on Twitter for it. I think the market structure is really going to be broken at 68, 69K, but at that point it's already too late. This is why I was like bullish at 58, and then closed my eyes and went on vacation before when it started breaking down, because it was like, I don't think it's going to break down fully. And then that has kind of like worked out decently.
Yes.
We're trading above 58K now, and I'm just going to hope that it's going to move to 69 and then going to break that too.
Yeah, there's always a risk, and I'm sure you've done this before, but this mental pattern where you're like, okay, 64K is the market structure level, and then it breaks it and goes to 68, and then you're like, well, 68 is the range high, so I'm not so sure now, and then it breaks it and goes to like 70, and you're like, well, that's like the highest close range high, I'm not so sure, and it breaks that and just keeps fucking melting up, and you just kind of been adjusting your bias the entire way up. So I think it's,
and at some point you're like, I'm too late.
Yeah,
like you adjust the bias, and then you're like, oh shit, I'm too late now. I need to.
Yeah.
And then you just never buy.
And then you short, actually. It's like, okay, even if I was late to the market structure breakout trade, I'm going to get the higher low and I'm going to scalp to my target. Do you remember that expression?
Oh, yeah, that's the best. Like when people are like, I'm bullish, but I didn't have a good entry, so I'm going to look for the short and then long, like flip from the short to the long. And those people always lose all their money.
Yes.
Like legit. Like
it's revenge trading in a really shitty disguise.
Oh, yeah. And then it's almost always into this, like, people really feel the urge to do that when the market is really strong. Like that's just kind of psychologically how that works, because they wanted to have a position in the first place, and then the market confirmed their position, but they don't have any. So they're like, fuck it, I'm just going to take a little short and then I'll take the long, which is the dumbest thing you can do, right? Talked about this before on the show, I'm sure.
Oh, it's very pervasive. Yeah.
But yeah, there's something. I mean, the most famous one is oh, who was it? Like in 2017, I think there was this guy. There was like no 2016, 2017. There was this guy in the BitMEX troll box that kept posting like Bitcoin's going to 20K, and then it was like trading at like 5 or 6K, and he was like, yeah, I'm just gonna like short this to 4K, and I'm gonna long it from 4K to 20K, and then it just kept going, like, and then it just went to exactly 20K,
Oh
and the
my
guy
God.
lost all of his money because he wanted to like desperately get that one short in before he
Yeah.
would long forever.
The parting gift, often the most
Yeah.
expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit like those are the saddest stories because technically you were right, and then you're forever gonna beat yourself up, right? Like if you're just wrong, it's easy to deal with somewhat. Like it sucks being wrong, but being right and then fucking it up, like it's 10 times worse. And I mean, I think every trader can tell that story, like how they've been right and then lost a bunch of money, and that hurting the most. And in those
Oh,
cases,
it's
it's like
terrible. Or
fucking
like
bad.
small
Yeah.
mistakes that then compound your decision, sort of compound themselves and force you to make bigger mistakes or even more smaller mistakes that turn into big mistakes. That tends to be the worst, you know?
Yeah.
Like, should have just moved on from this one loss and then you're in a revenge trading mindset and then you just missed out on your original trade. Like, it's so easy to fucking spiral in trading. It's terrifying, actually.
Yeah.
So weekly, by the way, even if 64K is, let's for argument's sake suppose 64K is not as significant as 68K. If someone's looking at this weekly close right now, are there any either systematic and or actionable, I guess, triggers or entries that can be taken from it? I know you had the cluster.
Yeah.
You had the wide version of it, right? From 61.4 to 64 or whatever.
Yep. Yep.
Would you expect that to turn to support, or at least the upper boundary and then the lower boundary if it's a deep wick? Like, you know, if this weekly closes in one way or another at 64K, be that a market structure break, whatever, be that a cluster reclaim, whatever, what does it mean practically from a trading system point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would turn into support. Like if we close like somewhere here and then run next week towards like 68, 69K, and then get like some TradFi bad news or whatever, or just generally like just a nuke, a leverage nuke. If people get too levered up, I think 64K, like 63, 64K, the upper boundary of that box would be interesting for an entry. Depending on why we get there, right? Like if we get a leverage nuke, seems like a good entry. If we get like just generally the market starts like just losing it, like let's say we close here at 65K and next week we just trade at 66 and then starts rounding out and starts running back down again, then maybe that level is less interesting. So it depends on how we get there, but I still think like just generally, like if we close above that level, we're gonna have to assume that it's gonna act as support. And the dumb thing is, right, if the market is really strong and if this breakout is as significant as people make it out to be, you're probably not going to get that retest, which is why like I was interested in 58K, because I just suck at these breakout trades, right? Because you technically, like, it's starting to break out right now. If you're buying right now, but then you get a nuke into the weekend and you actually close at 63 or 62K this weekend, like what do you do? Is it then like a false breakout and you close your trade? Or like just generally, like it puts you in such a hard spot sometimes, and I just don't want to deal with it. So like signal wise, yes, it'd be good if it closes above, and then you can kind of like look at it as like a resistance turn support, but just how to trade it is not that easy. It's more like a management thing for me now. Whereas because like if we close like at 66 or like anywhere above the box and then start losing it again, I'd probably just exit my trade.
Okay, so it's like an updated validation essentially to the 58K
Yeah.
entry. Is it just the upper boundary that you're more sensitive to, or do you have space to let it
No,
run to 62ish or whatever else?
I'm down for it to retest 61K.
Okay. That's fairly
But
wide. So I'm guessing target wise, if this trades, you're going to look to give it
yeah,
every opportunity to run essentially to like a higher time frame breakout, all time high type
yeah,
of thing.
like 80K,
Okay.
80, 85K maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, risk reward wise, this is the thing, right? If you're targeting that type of move, you can afford a 61k invalidation, even if it's like a soft stop or something. Whereas
Yeah.
if you have like 68k as like a mega high time frame trouble area, then the profile of the trade starts to look a lot worse, essentially.
Yeah.
Um,
It's hard to justify at that
it's hard to
point.
justify. So you always need to make a bet, right? Like especially if you're large move swing trading, at a certain point you're gonna have to decide that there's a resistance level that you kind of just don't care about, right? Like level to level type of stuff is good, especially if you're doing intraday entries for high time frame level to level where there's a ton of space. But if you're doing high time frame level to level and you take every level like very literally, very seriously, like it's the gospel, then a lot of the times you just won't have space to take good swing trades. Especially if you don't have like very good low time frame entries. So at a certain point, it all comes down to the fact that you have to bet on something, right? I'm going to bet that this is the move that breaks resistance and continues, and it's that kind of bet or implicit assumption, whatever you want to call it, that allows you to actually put some decent targets on your high time frame swing trades. Because if the level to level thing is taken literally, then realistically you're only going to be getting like 1 to 2 hour max in most cases. If you're just kind of purely trading the high time frame chart. So in many cases, there needs to be a sort of larger idea there, or at least a hierarchy of levels where you're willing to ignore some to target the others, you know?
Yeah.
I agree on the weekly time frame type of thing. I would start to find it mildly concerning if this kind of 64k turns into a complete flop. But realistically, a lot of the time, if you're getting breakout type of signals, and it doesn't even need to be from a market structure point of view, right? Like you could view it from a purely support resistance point of view, like that cluster you had either on the daily or even on the weekly, the 63 to 64k tighter weekly cluster. You could just ignore market structure and treat it as a breakout of a through weekly resistance, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't need to be entirely market structure oriented. But in general, when you get high time frame breaks of levels, I think you essentially get a two-part decision tree, at least the way I like to think about it. One is, hey, I want a piece of this, I'm going to enter aggressively. And the other is structure is broken or something's shifted, but I'm going to wait for the retracement leg or higher low or something like that in order to get a piece of it. And I think those are like the two clearest choices. And you can do both, for example, right? You can say, okay, this is a nice kind of systematic signal, if you will. And I'm going to trade the close or trade the next daily open or go down to the 1 hour, 15 minute to look for a low time frame entry to hold into a high time frame swing. Like all of that is reasonable. But the main part is you're not looking for a significant retracements on the high time frame. You're just expecting it to bang and go. And the second part of that tree is the slower moving one, where you're like, okay, high, whatever, market structure broken, level flipped. I'm gonna sit on the bid side for the retracement, and then you kind of place limits at the higher time frame level, or you wait for deeper corrections on the intraday time frames, like for the first support level to break, and then you actually buy the washout there, that type of stuff. I just think it's useful to have a decision process for when you put a lot of emphasis on either levels or high time frame closes, because a lot of the time what happens is that you're like, oh, this level is so important. Like if it breaks here, whoa, that's a big deal. And then it breaks and you're like, okay, wait, what do I do now? Do I market buy? Do I buy the daily close? Do I wait for a dip? Do I put a limit at the level itself? What time frames do I use? So I think it's quite nice to have some sort of decision tree that becomes available to you when you get high time frame signals like that. I actually tweeted about roughly what mine looks like anyway in one of my most recent tweets, where in most cases, if it's a really good signal, I'll look to either just literally buy close to the daily or weekly close, depending on the time frame. Or what I like doing is trading the next daily open after the close. And in most cases, that tends to be Monday as well, which is quite nice. So I'm like, okay, this is a nice high time frame close. Let me trade the next daily open. If the high time frame close is bullish, I'll look to play like a daily open strategy early in the week, either Monday or Tuesday, for example, if it's a weekly close, and that way get a low time frame entry with a high time frame target type of thing. Or if I'm not feeling it, or if the low time frames look really shitty and I don't want to chase the strength immediately, it'll just be a higher time frame, like 4 hour daily plus, like, hey, we've broken out, but this is the nearest high time frame support level that would have like a visible retracement, if that makes sense, and kind of go from there. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
it does. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really it for the weekly, right? Like whether market structure breaks or not is whatever, but if the market is as strong as it should be, then you kind of don't want to see a lot of this retrace straight away. I think that's always a bit of a red flag. And in terms of levels, if you want to play really close to the market, I'd say 64k is one of the best / better ones. And if you want to give it more space, swing trade Don style, then you could start carving out higher lows all the way to 60 technically, if you really want to give it some breathing room. And in terms of weekly resistance, again, if this is going to be a real market structure break, after 6 months of sideways, then the first resistance level should get smoked, right? Or at least
Yeah.
it shouldn't put up that much resistance, no pun intended. But I guess the earliest iteration of that is the 68K Don's important market structure level high, or close rather. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think it's accurate. I mean, the reason why oftentimes, like when you, and I have this a lot with people, like I don't really understand Don's decision making, and a lot of the time when it's like a little bit of like where you're like, okay, where is this coming from? It's like I look at the market and I wonder, is there gonna be a chance for me to enter cleanly at any point? And when there's not, I tend to kind of take entries that might make less sense, just on like a just at a face value, right? You look at it and you're like, this is not as like of a good of a signal, or just generally like doesn't really make much sense. And it's because I just otherwise wouldn't get an entry, right? Therefore, like for example, at 58K, I wouldn't have gotten any. Like I don't think I would have bought 65K now if I didn't like get it, and that's why I got the 58K entry. But obviously it's more risky at 58 because you're like technically broke down at that point. So technically it's bearish, and you have less chance. Like the odds of you being right are smaller.
Yes,
But
you get
you
paid
also,
for that risk, right? It's kind of
yes,
the name of the
exactly.
game. You get paid to take risk.
And you also get paid in just not having like the difficult choice on the
Yes.
breakout. So
Yes.
like if you're wondering like how does that make any sense, it's just basically me looking at the chart and I'm like, I probably wouldn't be comfortable buying the breakout above 65. And if that isn't the case, like I probably wouldn't be comfortable buying the breakout above 70, and that would mean I'm completely sidelined. So let me take the risk here, even though it's not so clean. And then I'd rather take the loss than not have an entry at all.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, do you remember we essentially reverse engineered this to like maximum breakout aversion is how to
yes.
define your trading system? It's like, what do I need to do to avoid trading a breakout, basically?
Yeah.
And you sort of work backwards from there, which is very unique, but also quite funny to just think about. I think for most crypto traders, breakouts like the number one thing.
Yeah, most
Whereas
people trade that way.
most people
But
trade that way. Most people lose money, haha. So there you go, right?
yeah, I think it's just a matter of what you like more. Like if you're sitting at the computer 24/7 and you kind of look at all the data and like your giga brain, then maybe you can kind of understand whether breakout is valid or not. And you know it every single time, and then fair enough. But for me, that's not it. So I cannot really tell you whether the 65K breakout right now is real or not. To me, it kind of looks real, like it feels real, just because we got here in such a weird way, just slowly grinding up above it, even though we had all the reasons to dump. But who the fuck knows at the end of the day? And I just like to avoid having to make difficult decisions in a very short amount of time. Like if you're really good at making really well educated 5-minute decisions, right, where you just sit there, or like really well planned, you just write everything down, you write your whole plan down, what to do when you get to a level in a certain way, and it's like 100-page document that is all like very easy to kind of navigate, then that might be the better way to play it. But I'm a lazy piece of shit, so I just look at it this way.
I mean, it's working. Makes sense. Yeah, breakout aversion makes, it's very reasonable, especially if, as you mentioned, you really have to know what you're doing. And also sizing breakouts is like an art in itself. Because in most cases, you want to get like the most size in your earliest proximity to invalidation, kind of at the cusp of a breakout. But that's also when the odds of it being a failed breakout are the highest. And that's obviously what you get paid for, right? You get paid for being early to a breakout because there's always a chance that it turns around, as opposed to just really, really chasing it. I'm on the daily time frame right now. I think there's some really interesting structure here, Don. So obviously we're trading around the previous sort of swing high at the moment. Two things stand out to me. Let me know if either of them make sense. One is that there's a really nice kind of daily engulfing candle that we had yesterday that broke us out of this ugly looking sort of diagonal-ish consolidation with a bunch of small bodies and took us through that high. I think in the really short term, for like intra-week bias, the low of that daily engulfing candle is like a decent short-term trading invalidation, because in general, when you get impulses through levels and these types of daily engulfings. If the market is genuinely strong, it should have no reason to trade through that, especially given this engulfing, as mentioned, well, it's kind of by definition, took out previous day's low. That should kind of be it if the market is strong on a very short time frame. So I think that in itself, that low at 62.6 for short-term trading is a decent line in the sand for directional bias. Obviously, if you look slightly to the left of it, there is like a cluster of lows there. So maybe it's not the best for like a mechanical stop where, if there's a quick spike, quick washout, you puke your position and that's it. It goes up from there. That's the shallow pullback. That would suck. But I think on a closing basis, if you're like someone who's either trailing or looking for updated invalidations or looking for directional bias in the short to medium term, I think that's pretty decent as far as the daily goes for that engulfing candle specifically. What do you think of that first and foremost?
Actually, yeah, I agree. I like it. I
Okay,
like it.
and the second thing I was going to say is in terms of daily levels, if there's a deeper pullback, the level that I actually really like is at 61.6-ish on the daily, which looks quite ugly. But basically, it was the top of the range that we had in August. We had a failed breakout through it, and then we flipped it and had our leg up. And so this is also one of those instances where something we talk a lot about on the show, you have a level, you have a failed breakout, which was the August portion. And then once we closed above it again on the 19th of September, that breakout was real, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of the double fake out thing we've spoken about extensively in the past. And I think that also makes for a decent support. Because again, if we close back through that, then the whole thing kind of looks fucked and the weekly time frame starts looking like shit, so on and so forth. So for me personally, the interim kind of closest to the market updated invalidation or line in the sand for directional bias is the daily engulfing candle low. And in terms of the deeper pullback level, I think like 60-ish, 61.6 for like the daily level itself, but whatever, round number wick to 60, if you want to take it that way for the intermediate pullback. I think any pullbacks much bigger than that start looking dodgy really quickly because hey, we've broken out, but then we've given back the engulfing candle, we've given out like the key level, which reclaimed the range, so on and so forth. The odds start shifting rather unfavorably. But I think for, at least for me, the short to medium term map for this week and next, those two levels on the daily make a lot of sense. What do you think? Do you have anything else on the daily that's spicy?
Yeah, I mean, we're currently at resistance, right? I have the cluster on the 1st of August, the green candle before the entire
pre-breakdown cluster.
Yeah, and that rejected us before. Now we're here again.
So you're full short, right? That's what I'm hearing.
I mean, I probably should be, but no, second test obviously worse than the first one to me. But there's a chance that it kind of rejects here, and then tries again a little bit later next week. So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind. Like, it's the most, I think, on the daily time frames, the most important level we have, just based on the fact that like you start breaking that, we just make new like if you go back to 68K on the daily, it just doesn't really look like it wants to go lower, right? Like, just from like a cursory glance at the market, we go back to 68K now. Even if we get a pullback, you'd expect it to start breaking out. So like, this is the most important level that the bears have. So I wouldn't be too aggressively shit talking them, but I also think they're probably just wrong. Like, the bears are probably wrong. Like, first test on that level was much better than the second one, and just generally we had the chance to break down, we didn't. So I'm carefully optimistic for now. And I do have the exact same level, 61.6. Like, that's like, if you pull back, that'd be a level that'd be interesting. But best case would be no pullback. Like, that would be proof that the market is actually strong, because we've had enough of it, right? Like, we've had enough of chop, we've had enough of like fake outs and like fucking people over. So now we need the market to actually just start moving. And I think it'd be a good time right now. So we'll see how it goes.
Are you on the seasonality train, Don?
Nah, fuck that.
Yeah, I don't like it either.
Like, I find it like,
it suits my bias. Yes, please. But
yeah. I mean,
I don't think it's a good starting point, if that makes sense.
No. That's exactly what I say too. Like, I have a trade and seasonality is my way. I'm like, oh yeah, shit, seasonality is so good. and I have a trade, and seasonality goes against me, and I'm like, oh, I mean, it's
Fucking
fucking
voodoo shit statistics, zero sample size.
yeah.
Cope.
It's like it's like the star signs for men, whatever,
Yes,
like the
astrology
whole
for
thing.
men, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm not a really big believer. People kept telling me that it was like that last month was gonna be terrible because, or like this month was gonna be terrible. Like September seasonality is really bad, right? Like that's the one, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's September.
Yeah. Well, September is green now, quite a bit. So like opened at 58, we're trading at 65. Something terrible would have to happen in the next 3 days to turn that
The
red.
worst weekend ever, just for the seasonality, bro, is to make it all back in one
Yeah.
trade, in one weekend.
Yeah. So people are like looking at seasonality, completely ignoring that September completely went against it, right? And then they're like, "Oh, October is such a good month just based on seasonality." And I'm like, "Dude, September was completely the opposite." So if you start looking at it that way, you should be careful in October. Like I think it's nice if it agrees with your bias and everything, but I don't really care about it much more than that, and it
Yeah.
will never invalidate my trade ideas in any shape or form.
Yeah. Nice window dressing, not much more than
Yeah,
that. Especially
exactly.
with the
Which is
sample sizes
useless.
we have in crypto, like you just can't, I understand it elsewhere. And I think general volatility, seasonality trends can make sense. And even
I mean
then,
that yes,
yeah,
yes,
that's like okay, but like purely directional stuff, I'm like, there's got to be a more firm basis, I think, for risking your money than that. But I think that's mostly it for BTC as far as technical stuff goes, right? Sort of
yeah,
weekly close through 64K be pretty good. That'd be some form of market structure break. I know you like 68K. There's a lot of eyes on 64K, so it's at least significant from that point of view. Even if you ignore the market structure argument, purely from a cluster support resistance level perspective, 64K is still significant. And then diluting that to the daily time frame, I think you essentially have three levels. One is the Don's Magic 66K pre-breakdown cluster. The other is the daily engulfing candle as the most recent kind of iteration of strength. And then the SR, the bigger sort of breakout level at 61K. So really three levels. I think that's pretty reasonable. If we get a flush, I think that'd make for an interesting trade. There hasn't been like a ton of open interest, like specifically on this rally, and a fair bit of it closed last I checked. But I still think a bit of a something scary looking to give a low time frame entry, I would welcome at least, but not. It's not the type of thing that you pray for or rely on nonetheless. And yeah, I think the most important thing is, as mentioned, you have some sort of decision tree for what you do if you get high time frame candle closes that are important. Be that you engage realistically, you're either engaging with them on lower time frames or you're waiting for a high time frame pullback. And engaging in lower time frames could just mean, hey, fuck it, like I want like a spot position. I don't care about trading. I'm just gonna buy around the close and let it play out with a wider invalidation, but also wider target. Like that doesn't look particularly sexy because it's not the 50 risk reward trading view tool type of thing, but it's hardly a terrible way to trade crypto, especially if it has you trading less. And as you know, I'm the expert of that, Don. Any
next
other
trade 2026.
2025, Don? I might trade the quarter century close and open. That's
Oh
a
shit,
pretty big
yeah,
one on the high time frame calendar. So stay tuned for that one.
I'm down.
Any other questions, comments, concerns, observations, fears for the daily time frame or any other time frame for BTC?
No, I mean it's in this range is so old that it's really hard to trade. So you kind of have to close your eyes and pray. Like if you're bear, get a decent entry and then close your eyes and pray that you don't get fucked. And if you're bull, the same applies to you. And then we'll see how it turns out. But like with these old ranges, you
Yeah.
kind of like it's so hard to just be like, oh yeah, because there's infinite reasons to go down and infinite reasons to go up, right? And then the moment the market like truly breaks out is where it's gonna look very, very fucking obvious. And I mean, I'm betting on up, but it's gonna look so obvious that this was bearish if it breaks down, and the opposite is true if it breaks up, right?
Classic.
So yeah, old ranges just kind of hard to trade from a technical perspective.
Yeah.
You just kind of have to have a good feel for the market itself to trade these right.
Yes.
And that is not always guaranteed, right? You can have a good feel for the market 7 out of 10 times, but there's always going to be those 3 times that fuck you over. So yeah.
And of course, those are the 3 that you size up on have a terrible life as a result.
Yep.
There's also nothing too telling or crazy on the futures side. Quarterly basis is like 6% in most venues, which isn't that much really, considering how price has moved and what we're used to historically. That's still pretty reasonable and hasn't like run ahead of the market by any means. Same with funding in most venues. I mean, Bybit's at like Binance is at 7%, Bybit is at like 8% APR. Annualized, obviously. So that APR annualized, that's like saying ATM machine. But yeah, it's like a lot of the price action though has been spot driven. So I think we've kind of had a short period over the last maybe month or so where specifically futures, like looking at BTC funding, quarterly basis, large changes in open interest, that hasn't conferred as much signal or alpha as it ordinarily would, simply because this whole thing is being sort of pushed around by spot, be it sale or buying or like fucking old wallets selling, ETF stuff. It's been pretty spot dominant on that side of things. And then even looking at the market as a whole when it comes to altcoins, which is something we'll talk about, those funding rates aren't jammed by any means. There isn't a ton of, I think certainly much less alt froth than you'd expect on the perp/future side. Even looking at the top gainers for the week, I mean, SHIB is at like 11% APR, Pepe at 16. The whole thing is green. It's pretty conservative on that side of things. So I don't think that's where you're going to get a lot of signal unless it changes quickly. And honestly, I don't know what you do, and I know you don't look at this stuff as much, but if anything, when the futures side or the derivative side tends to be a bit more noisy and more flat and less signal, I just put even more weight on the TA side of things. Because obviously spot you can look at, whatever, spot CVD, but that gets way noisier than derivative CVD. And you can look at like bid ask, book depth on the spot side, etc. But again, much noisier than derivatives in my opinion. So as a result, if I'm going to trade it, I just like, okay, fuck it, no signal there. I'm going to look on the TA side and not really try to overthink it too much.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good signal that we don't have too much leverage in the system, even though we're trading above 60K, right? Because 60K is quite significant. Like that's high, just historically high prices. And just if you go from history, like how leverage has been at 60K before, this is much better than it has been before, right? Like we're at 60K with everyone just kind of jamming it down. Now we're at 60K with like quite muted leverage, at least from like the obvious leverage that we have in the market. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's just better, right? Like doesn't mean we have to go up, but it just means that like if we go down, there's chances it actually just bleeds out rather than just go straight in a straight line. So like I look at that and I'm like, oh, okay, I like you basically, I can trust the TA a little bit more and I have to be a little bit less afraid of the entire market rug pulling me.
Fewer apes to push price into your stops.
Yeah, exactly.
But also means harder to get as good flush entries, right?
So
it's always a double-edged sword with that type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, those are the best. Like when you have, like when the market is really, really hot and you have a lot of leverage in it and a lot of eyes on the market, when you get these massive flushes, like those are the generational entries where you basically buy and then the next day you're up to X. Like those are the good times. We don't have that right now.
I think when the market looks like this, if you're going to get flushes, you want them to be on low-ish timeframes and not really high magnitude. Because really high magnitude flushes also tend to mean that the market conditions go to like choppy, grindy, and that's a pain in the ass. I think if you're arguing for strength, you still want to see periodic flushes, but like I'm talking 5 to 15 minutes, relatively high in sort of OI change and liquidations, but for that time frame, like for the trading day or whatever else, and then for the market to recover pretty quickly. So it's sort of different, right? Like if the market looks like a piece of shit or looks weak, you want to see like a huge flush and huge price dislocation, and that's when you get your sort of whatever generational type of setups with like massive wipeouts. But once it's strong and you're getting flushes, you actually don't want those to be massive. You want those to be like controlled, I think. And it's just like the worst, most leveraged participants getting washed out. Because historically, and I think we've discussed this on the show, when you have a strong market and there's then a mega leverage flush, that's actually a bit of a top signal, contrary to popular
Yes.
belief. So
I mean, it
you
is
want controlled flushes, basically, if the market is
yes,
sort of looking stronger.
for the market to kind of move like back up.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Like
yes.
because like the strong flushes, like those where like everything goes down, like the altcoins go down 60, 70, 80% sometimes, right? Like just straight line. That's usually the end of the cycle. But also like if you buy that flush, you can buy like you can literally sell like a week later and be up like stupid amounts. So like those are trading opportunities,
Yes.
but they also kind of like give you a signal that maybe the cycles come to an end. So depending on
Yes.
what you want, obviously a good thing or a bad thing, right? Like if you want the cycle to continue, then it's a bad thing. If you just want a really good entry for like a short-term trade, like the best short-term trade you can ever have, that's a good thing for you. So
Yeah,
depends.
even just the ARBs that become available when all that shit breaks and perps get janky. There's a lot of money that gets swept up during
Yeah.
those time periods. I think that's it for BTC, right? TLDR, monthly good. Please do something.
Yeah.
Weekly, looking better than it has in months. If it
Yeah.
is sort of a real breakout market structure break, your options are to either play close to the market and look at lower time frame levels for direct continuation. If it starts to pull back immediately, you'll probably lose money on your early buys, but then the one bet you make is that you get a higher low out of it. And in terms of daily time frame commentary, the only relevant level now is some form of resistance at 65k, like going into the weekend, so on and so forth in that pre breakdown cluster. But other levels would be the engulfing candle low and 61.5 as the 61.7, whatever, as the big breakout. What do you think of that?
Yep. Well said.
Cool. Also agreed. Let's talk about ETH, Don, your favorite
Uh,
crypto
it's
asset.
it's a shame. It's a shame.
Do you want to start USD or BTC?
BTC just because.
Just BTC. Okay.
Start with the bad.
Start with the bad. Is this monthly support, Don?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it is monthly support. I think anything between basically 0.0, whatever the fuck we are at right now, and 0.0, oh, I need to just 3.5 or something. Like anything in that area is support. So like from where we are right now down to like 10%, 12% below where we are right now, like that area I think is a good support. Problem is that this hasn't really given any indication that it actually wants to show any strength. But on the monthly time frame, we are finally at support on ETH BTC. So that's a good thing.
It's been ages.
Yeah.
Also, that breakdown signal took so long, didn't it? I
Oh
remember in
yeah.
1986, we were talking about the breakdown and flip at like
I mean,
053, 055 or whatever, depending on where the level was drawn. Also, yeah, 056, 053, whatever. It just looked like a breakdown and retest. It just took like half a year to go from resistance
more
to
9 months.
9 months.
9
Dude,
months.
these monthly timeframes have been slow even by monthly standards, as I mentioned
Yeah.
earlier. It's unreal. But yeah,
It's brutal.
I mean, there's some sort of support there.
Yeah.
I don't know. There have been other levels of support in the last year and a half or whatever, and I mean, this is the best one, obviously. But is this enough to get you to either prioritize or shift or rotate?
I mean, I have a little bit. I have a little
Okay.
bit of ETH. I mean, this is where the pain comes in. Like, I bought it at the same time as I bought Bitcoin, at 58k Bitcoin. Like, that's up quite a bit. On ETH, it's a little bit worse. That's like on ETH, I'm up like, let me check. On ETH, I'm up like 3, 4, 5% ish.
Okay. Yeah.
And on Bitcoin,
So it covers your
I'm
trading fees at least, eh?
yeah, and Bitcoin's like 13%.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's a little bit painful just
Yeah.
because I mean one is the more risky one and the other one is the less risky one. But yeah, I mean ETH BTC is on monthly support. On the weekly time frame, it's less good. On the daily time frame, it's less good. It's just like high time frame is where it's at right now on ETH BTC. But really has been weak. Every altcoin besides Solana and like the meme coins, like the flavor of the month tiny coins, right, has been kind of shit. Like everything that influencers talk about has been better, to be honest. Like like the more influencers you have talking about any coin, the better it has been, which is fucking cursed. I hate it. You can basically make your own kind of like self-fulfilling prophecies by talking about the lower cap coin and chilling it a bunch, and then it's probably gonna go up. Like that's the what decides where the market goes on these low cap coins. And ETH right now doesn't really have any of the hype, right? Like everyone's kind of tired of ETH. So it has been underperforming, but I have a little bit of hope on the monthly. And then when you go on ETH USD, that's a little bit better, right? Like ETH USD doesn't really look that bad on any time frame. It's just been carried by Bitcoin. On the monthly time frame, I don't know if you have that level, but I have like 2.27.
Yes.
And we hit that and then bounced, and so far so good, right? Like that's not that bad.
It's the first useful monthly level on ETH since forever, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, it broke out and now it's retested the breakout, which, I mean, it's better if it doesn't retest the breakout, but it's still like in significant level. And I think if it comes back up, like start looking really good, really fast. Just has to show some strength for once, which apparently is really hard to do. And then when you go on the weekly time frame, I have 2.5K as the level, and we had a little bit of a shakeout the last couple of weeks below it. Now we're trading back above it. So as long as that holds, I have a little bit of hope on ETH.
Yeah, 2.5K going all the way back to the pre-breakdown range.
Exactly.
Right? Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Do you give any weight to the really ugly looking cluster thing we're trading into now? Those two green candles before we made the most recent low. But I mean, those levels are so close. It's more or less the same thing. But
I mean, yeah, I think it's why we're struggling. Basically,
do you think it's that?
Yeah. So yes, like if you bought low, like if you bought at 2.2K and you just took a short-term time frame trade, short-term trade, this is where you'd want to TP, right? And I think that's kind of what we're struggling with. So if you would want to trade the breakout, you would want to see it trade above 2.8K, 2.8, and then I think you could start hoping for like a 3K breakout, and at that point it starts looking really good. Like I think ETH, like if you really want to be conservative and if you just don't want to get fucked by ETH again, which I think is very, very sane, like because ETH just been trading like a piece of shit. The moment ETH trades back above 3K, I think you wanna be long ETH. Anything below is just being a little bit greedy.
Do you have, if the market pulls back to 2.5K, would that be a valid support test, like a over-under type of meme or just a retest type of thing?
Yeah, I mean 2.5 would be okay.
Yeah, so it's still significant enough to be support.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's very, very close. So
it's very close, yeah. So realistically, it's like 2.5 last ditch, 3K plus if you don't want to get tortured and fancy a breakout signal.
Yeah, I think generally like 3K is at least not gonna fuck you over. Like that's a significant kind of like reclaim. Like 2.9K plus, that starts looking like, just chart wise, the chart actually starts looking aggressively good, which would be a first in a while. I'm just like, the reason why I have a little bit of an earlier entry and like a good opinion, or like at least I'm willing to give it a try, is because I think the ETH hate has gotten to levels that is just unreasonable. People are hating on ETH just because, and people are hating on ETH because everyone else is hating on it. When you look at it objectively, it's been performing much better than like 99% of the other altcoins. It's just been, this entire cycle has not been altcoin centric. And a lot of people will disagree with me on this, and they're going to be like, yeah, but my meme coin went up this and that. But like just generally the general altcoin landscape, right? Like the big altcoin market hasn't really moved much. It's just been like meme coins back and forth. And it's been a bunch of meme coins making it into like the top 100 of market caps. But it's not really been, okay, altcoins are showing any sign of life. It's just been like the shittiest of the shittiest coins have been getting pump and dumped, and that's been the altcoin landscape. And that obviously, like when no one is ready to buy altcoins other than pump and dumps, that obviously translates also into like poor price action on ETH. Solana is a little bit in a different category, just because, and I think this is one of the many reasons, like one of the many reasons why it did well is that it just basically capitulated so fucking hard that there was just so much more to gain, right? Like you have a decent coin that everyone knows that capitulates to basically zero, but not because it did anything fundamentally wrong, but because of outside factors. You have a really good narrative for that, right? Because the people that sold it are going to buy it back. The people that are shorting it because they think the coin is like done now are going to get liquidated. And then you have like a really strong rally, and that's going to attract all the people that are like looking for strength, and like all the traders. They're like, oh, this is the coin to have eyes on. And then it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy in that way, where it's like it's showing strength, and therefore people are buying it, showing like giving it more strength. And that's kind of been the story for Solana this cycle. And it's all the way back on a relative basis where it was at cycle peaks, right? Like in when you like do the whole sold ETH thing, like that's back to where it was in 2021. And that's going to be an interesting one, whether that like kind of just keeps up and keeps stealing like the bid away from ETH. I could see it, honestly. I think it's a little bit more like it's a leveraged ETH in a way, where you like you get more upside if everything goes up, and you get more downside if everything goes down. At this point, wasn't like that.
Yeah.
It was just basically like you get more money if you if you trade Sol no matter what.
Although for most people, they probably don't view it in Sol ETH terms anymore, right? Like new cycle participants, at least new cycle participants, they're like, oh well, ETH, I don't use that. Whereas Solana is like a stronger coin, and it's got the trenches, and everyone's getting rich off meme coins. Why would I use ETH?
Yes.
Type of thing? Because they went around for like DeFi summer and stuff, right? Or early ETH price action. So those are two completely different universes, like new entrant Solana price action plus meme coin trenches versus dynastic ETH wealth from early ETH days, ICO days, and sort of DeFi days, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think the whole landscape is gonna shift the moment. Like if you get like a strong ETH breakout, like people are gonna go back to the ETH ecosystem basically, and are gonna gamble there. And if you keep seeing Solana strength, you're just gonna see like people gambling there. So like people are always like, oh yeah, Solana's been like outperforming the last 2 years, or like the last year, and therefore like ETH's done for. And I think it's basically like this entire space, if something moves like strongly to the upside, people think it's good, and if it doesn't, it's bad. And that's not necessarily true, right? Because if you look at Solana, for example, I mean, that was one of the biggest losers of last cycle, right? Like that took a huge fucking like nuke from 266 all the way down to $8, right? So like 97% down. If you look at it that way, like it went down, so therefore it has to be shit. Like that's not how it is, right? It's just basically like people have this mindset of, okay, something goes up, it's good, something goes down, it's bad. And I think it's just a bad way to look at it. And you have to understand that the crypto participants will generally go wherever price action is good, right? So basically the moment you get good price action on any coin, right, like you get like the new coins, like I think Sui is one of the newer ones, right, that has been performing well.
Yep.
The moment you get one of these coins that gets significantly big enough, and has like an environment where you can actually do like the whole meme coin and whatever NFTs, all that stuff on, you're gonna see a massive move from Solana to that new coin. You just basically people just jump to whatever's going up, is what I'm saying. And therefore you have like on an ETH it's a little bit different, because people have just been like, it's so old at this point, that people are just like sitting on their stuff on ETH, which doesn't really like, it's not good for short-term price action because people are just like doing nothing. But you also have less risk, right? So basically, the moment you get a new Sol-like competitor, I think that has good price action. You're going to see a bunch of people move from Solana to that new coin. With ETH, it's much slower, but obviously, like price action on ETH's been so shit that Sol's just a better place to trade just actively. So if you're trading actively with no ties to anything and no emotional baggage, I think you still want to just look at the stronger coin in that Solana right now, right? So you want to be trading Solana. If you have a little bit of a fundamental kind of fundamental baggage and you're a back holder, then I mean you can do whatever else you want. I think there's a big difference, and people just look at the market very wrong.
Do you think the
because
trenches are fungible, essentially? It's not the trench meme coin meta isn't tied to Solana per se.
no, it's not. Like it's completely. I mean, it was tied to ETH last cycle, or like the cycle before last cycle. Like this is a thing that we've. This is not the first time that we've seen this, right? Like the whole trenches, whatever. Like the speculation on a chain, that shit moves from cycle to cycle depending on like just the flavor of the month. Like the stuff that gives you the best returns, that's where people are gonna be, and it's really not like. Especially now, you can see how it's not sticky, right? Because we've seen very little out of ETH this cycle, and then people are going to be like, "Yeah, but that's because ETH is shit." But we're gonna get something very similar to Solana, like this cycle. Like there's going to be a bunch of exciting new coins that are going to come out, and they're gonna take the spotlight. And we had the same with BNB, right? Like people completely forget how the whole BNB story went, where we're like everyone was trading on Binance chain. Like people were making millions on BNB, and like the entirety of CT didn't get any of it. And you're gonna have that same story again. Like it's not really that, like BNB is not really that significant for this cycle. It hasn't been, and next cycle you're probably gonna have a completely different landscape, and really only depends on where you have good price action. So I really don't think it's just like oh yeah, we're gonna have the trenches on Solana from now till the end of time. I think there's gonna be a massive shift to the next best thing relatively soonish, I think. Doesn't have to mean that Solana has to go down though, and Solana actually looks quite good in comparison to a lot of other things right now.
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't disagree about the assumption that trenches are non-fungible, or at least that they're tied to one chain, because we've been through so many chains, right? If anything, the historical record, as you mentioned, is against that proposition, from BNB to ETH to Sol and who knows where next. Speaking of Sol USD price action, though, I saw you tweeted like an updated chart, or you spoke about it on stream more specifically.
Yeah, I did.
Is it still the 135? I mean, dude, look, regarding the daily level, if I got a penny every time I said 125 and tested too many times, I would have a lot of pennies. And this thing is pure adamantium at this point. If you know, you know, the famous Willy Woo reference. But yeah, there's almost like a vested interest in defending that type of level. If anything, it makes me way more curious to find out what/who is hanging out below. That will make for some fun exploration, but no money is made in hoping levels break, right? So I mean, that's still been holding, and as a whole, if you kind of zoom out on the daily or look at the weekly, this is just like one very long consolidation. But the thing is, unlike many other definitions used for chop, like you'll see a market just trending down and people will call it chop. That's like the crypto Twitter classic, but this is been legitimate chop as far as I'm concerned. On Sol since pretty much the top, right? Since March, essentially, or you could use May if you want, but from the first half of the year, it's essentially been sideways the whole time. Meanwhile, the trenches have gone through an absolute roller coaster during that time.
Oh period. Yeah. People have lost everything that they've gained, and now like other people are making a bunch of gains.
Lots of new stuff. Yeah, I mean, still the home of the meta, right?
But right now, Sol, definitely,
yes. But as far as Sol token price, it's kind of neither here nor there, right?
Yeah, but throw on the monthly chart. Sol USD monthly.
I'm on the Sol USD monthly. That's really nice, isn't it? It
Yeah, I mean
kind of
that's like
looks like
it's
BTC,
Bitcoin.
if anything,
It's
right?
exactly Bitcoin. Yep.
Yeah. Same as
And
BTC.
so, and I mean, this is like Bitcoin is above all-time high. This is not, but otherwise it's the exact same chart. It's not a bad looking chart to me. Like
It's not.
as long as that 100 level holds, right? Like 100 to 120, that support.
Yes.
That's like a really, really good looking chart. And the longer you hang out like below the all-time high, you'd think that we're gonna break out above it, right? Like and go towards like 300 or 400. Just like when you look at it from on a monthly time scale, like 300 doesn't really seem that crazy. Obviously, if you go to lower time frames, you're like, what the fuck? But on the monthly time frame, like just if the market moves up, I think there's a really, really high chance that Solana is just going to break the all-time high and go towards 300, 400.
Yeah, I mean that's the
And
prevailing
that's,
thesis for like breakout positioning in general, right? That like, hey, I'm
yeah,
not just positioning, and it applies to BTC as well. That hey, I'm not just positioning for a breakout. It's the breakout. It's a breakout in the context of A, being so close to all-time high, and B, taking 6 fucking months. So
yeah.
if your target for that is like plus 8% to our booked paid group new first, thanks for playing, that's not really appropriate in this context.
Yeah. No, I just look at it and I look at the monthly and that's quite good.
Yeah.
I look at the weekly and that's kind of been rescued. And I look at the daily and it's just a ginormous range where the bottom just keeps holding. And I think the people that were defending 125, they might have defended it long enough, right? Like the kind of like short bear market on Bitcoin where we went from 73 all the way down to 49. Like that's a decent 33% pullback. Like that was enough. Like the bears had quite a bit of chances to take it down below 125, but never managed to. So if you manage to hold up something until the market conditions drastically improve, maybe that just did the trick, right? And
Yeah, same with Sol BTC, right?
yeah, I mean, just generally, Sol BTC also just a range, right?
Yeah,
And that's best case scenario for how shitty the
definitely,
market has been.
definitely.
So I'm not like I was shorting Solana for like a bunch of these moves down, right, from 180 down to like 130 over and over and over again. I wouldn't really want to anymore. Like I think like if anything right now it makes more sense. Like at least if you're somewhat bullish the crypto markets, right? Like if you're a super ginormous bear, then you'd be looking for like a short entry that finally takes it below 125. Because if we do break that level, I think all mayhem breaks loose, right? Like shit gets wild. But I think at this point, it's unlikely to, just based on the fact that I think Bitcoin's probably gonna go up. Obviously, if I'm wrong on that, I like Solana is gonna shit the bed too. But right now, I don't really see good reason to think that that's gonna be exceptionally bad. Just generally, like Sol just looks like a stronger contender in the market than anything else.
Yeah, I mean,
Really.
it survived the BTC, bear market pullback, right?
Yep.
And it also survived like a really miserable period in the trenches, just like
Oh yeah.
absolute dog shit, not a single thing going to radium, etc. And 125 was still defended that whole time. So
Yeah.
as far as lines in the sand go, at least there's a very clear one there. And yeah, the monthly time frame is very good.
And Sol BTC also
Sol
really good.
BTC, yes. I mean, the thing is, you're like, oh, Sol BTC just went sideways. Like, yeah, but that's, this is like the number one altcoin in the space, keeping relative strength with the thing that's been leading the cycle, even though it's had its own endogenous risks in, the trenches, which is its main thing, turning to shit. That's still, sideways is relative strength, basically, is the argument I'm trying to make here. Yeah, dude, there's 100% a world in which, if you're looking at these monthly timeframes, these weekly breakouts, you just like have some, you like have some Sol, have some BTC, and then if you're wrong, like whatever the high time frame levels like aren't that far away. But if you're right, you can at least
They're
at this
gonna double,
point,
yeah.
you can make a reasonable argument for like high time frame post consolidation expansion through all time high, and that if that piece of the pie is available, you should want some portion of it at least.
Yeah.
And then for a lot of people, I think the reason people don't trade a lot of low rebalancing, low frequency spot is basically ego. if that makes sense. Like some combination of ego and trading addiction, where it's like, oh well, I could make so much more money, you know, like it pulls back 2%, and like, oh, I should have closed my long, and I would have shorted, I would have made this much, and I would have gotten better entry, and you kind of like psyop yourself into thinking that more is better, and that you would have done all these amazing trades. But as you and I know, especially after 7 years, in many cases, just like having a position and then letting the market do the rest for you where appropriate. And you know, if these higher timeframes continue to look this way, we're approaching a pretty reasonable time to be making those sorts of arguments, right? Kind of high time. Again, if you zoom out, like, you know, TA, market structure, support resistance levels, bullshit aside, there is, you know, the state of the market for a lot of these majors, at least for BTC and Sol, is such that we have strength in a very long consolidation, very close to the all-time high. And I think that's worth taking seriously, unless I'm insane.
No, I agree with you. Like the market, like it was pretty obvious, at least like I just generally think it was pretty obvious that the market was going to take a breather when we started chopping around like 70K. And there was even a world in which we got like a bigger pullback than we got. But it was always on a timer, right? Like the longer this goes on, the more likely it is that it's just digesting this entire move from 16K to 60K, and then you're gonna have more strength. And the same is obviously true for altcoins, right? Like if you see an altcoin run from like Solana did, like from 8 to 200, and then put in a range from like 200 to like 120, like which is, it didn't even really like it hit one support level, right, of the prior rally, and that is 113, like, and that barely got hit. Like if you look on the weekly time frame of Sol USD, it literally just ranged in between the highest 2 weekly candles, right? That's what Solana did. Yeah, I don't know, like that's pretty strong. Like that's not that bad. And the longer this ranges and the more it pushes, like slowly pushes up, the better it gets.
But obviously, if it breaks down, ignore everything we said, and it's fucked.
Oh, if it breaks down, it's fucked.
Same for BTC, same for everything.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing with ranges like that.
Yes.
But you would just generally assume, like when you have a range after, like, you have a really strong trend and then you get sideways, like that's just generally, you should assume that that's gonna go up, unless there's really, really good reason to think otherwise. It's just like, you just look at, like, you move down, it's the same story, right? Like let's say you move down from 60K Bitcoin to 30K Bitcoin, and then you go sideways. Like technically speaking, you should be like, hey, there's probably another move coming, right? Like if it doesn't really do anything, it's more often than not just digestion of the prior move. And the same is true on the other side too, obviously. Like you go up, you go sideways, there's a good chance that it's just kind of like chilling before the next move.
Like
and the next move,
consolidation, that thing, right?
And I mean the next move might be just like a false breakout, but that's still like, if Bitcoin, like, or like if Solana breaks, like has a false breakout above 200, like that's probably going to be to 250 to 300, and that would be a 2x from where it is right now. And I could I honestly could see that, like just a false breakout towards like 300, and then not going to whatever else people target, like 1000 plus. Like I could see that, but that's still like a decent chunk right there. So why not?
Agreed. I think the basically low time frame spot chads, if you will, holiday heroes have been having a much better time than someone being very, very active in these markets, at least for the past month or few months. I mean, depending on your time horizon. In some cases, like 6 months. But
I think a lot of people lost a lot of money in the last 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, for sure. Especially the last like 3-4 months, I think have been really brutal. Altcoins, Don. So why did you FUD me out of my generational Popcat entry asking for a friend?
Did I?
No, not really. I asked you whether to buy like 60 cents and then nuke to like 20 cents or something. I'm not sure, actually. It might have been something like that. But yeah, cat coins have been going up. Don't know if you've been following the meme coin meta.
I haven't.
That's been a thing. Yeah. And I mean, WIF looks better than before. That's one.
Oh yeah, I was praising WIF like 2 days ago, and now it's up only.
There you go. So tell me about, do you have any altcoins? Are you interested in altcoins? Do you have a view on like sectors, dogs, cats, Memes continued outperformance. There's some weird ones like Sui that you mentioned is pretty much retraced its entire. It's just like a new fucking market cycle, close to the high.
Yeah, did it nuke all the way back down? I don't even follow.
I mean, it went to like 40 cents from $2.10, and now is at 170. So 180.
Oh yeah, but I mean, it's been just up only. Yeah.
Yes.
Like in the last few days. Yeah, no, I'm like, I don't really care.
Yeah, fine.
I mean, there's a lot of altcoins that look decent. I just like, I can't be asked. Honestly, just hand to heart. I look at the altcoins and I see a bunch of good charts. Honestly, it's just I don't really care too much. Bitcoin and ETH trading is already boring enough for me. I don't want to go down the list. But when I look at the altcoins, like even the meme coins don't look that bad anymore. To me, I said the same thing on the stream on Wednesday, and that was actually before a lot of these moves happened. I'm not hating anymore. Like I don't see a good reason to hate. Like they went down. Like the meme coin sector went down. They went through an entire market cycle, right? Like I was shit talking the meme coins. They went down like probably on average. On average, they probably went down 98%, but the big ones went down like 60% ish. And everyone just kind of lost all their money, and now we're in a spot where I think they might do better again. Like they're at least not as shitty as they were like a couple of months ago. And other altcoins, like you said, Sui, for example, like there's some obvious strength there. So I think the altcoin market, especially as long as Bitcoin can hold above like 64, 65K, I think that's kind of a line in the sand. I think you're going to see a bunch of altcoins just popping here and there. And that includes meme coins.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, the approach for that type of thing, at least the strategy I used to employ when I trade altcoins more frequently, is that if I have a BTC position and or bias and I just want more risk, I'll literally filter by 7-day, 3-day, 1-day performance, and also look at the charts that are close to / at breakout levels or proximity to all-time high, and just pump those, hoping that the tide carries me through continuation-wise. Because it's all the same trade, realistically, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're long a bunch of alts, you can't be super bearish BTC in most cases. And same with ETH and same with Sol. It has like a cascading effect. Like if your high time frame directional bias for like BTC is wrong, then all your underlying assumptions are most likely to be wrong as well. There are exceptions to that. Like if your BTC view is like, hey, it looks pretty good, but it might chop, and I think alts will do better. I think that's different. That's more nuanced and certainly has been appropriate for the last like couple of weeks, right? But I think if you have like a big bearish BTC take and then just pile on a bunch of altcoin long risk, you're kind of fighting an uphill battle there. But yeah, if you're bullish BTC, have a bullish BTC directional bias position for BTC, and you just want more risk, more leverage, more beta, whatever, then I think in most cases a good start is either to look at sectors that you think have been performing well or will perform well, or just literally looking at 24-hour, 3-day, 7-day altcoin performance, and then filter, making a watch list out of those, and then looking at the specific charts to see which has the best levels, which has breakout levels, proximity to invalidation, or the ones that will just like give you a nice and clean entry, and just kind of tag those on. I know it sounds super simplistic, but I think that's actually as complicated as it needs to be, because you don't want to like compound the difficulty of. Because again, it's all under the same umbrella, so there's no need to make it needlessly complex, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Fantastic. I mean, my watch list at the moment is like BTC, ETH BTC, and then I've just got like most of the high caps / stuff that's been moving. AVAX, Link, Nia, Pepe, Popcat, Say, Sheeb, Sui, Sol, Tau, Tia, Tron, WIF, and WorldCoin, and the S&P there as well.
Dogecoin's also been moving, actually.
Yeah, Dogecoin. I need to add. Why is that missing? I will add Dogecoin. Is that still going to $1, Don? I'm just gonna haunt you with your previous calls.
I mean, at right now, it actually looks really, really good. Someone asked me about Dogecoin like 2 days ago, and I was like, I mean, might as well bet on it at 0.1, hoping that it never breaks it again and just goes to $1. And
easy 10x. Thanks for playing.
Yeah, right now, like that's been good price action the last 2 days.
Also, Don, I just want you to know that if I kill myself, it's this beeping that caused it, and I hope.
Oh, I mean,
if there's any investigation, just shut it down at the source. Be like, this is an open shut case.
No. I mean, if I kill myself, it's gonna be because of your beeping.
I'm so sorry. I can't wait for the comments. It's like the show is back, but I couldn't listen to it for more than 2 minutes because of my alarm.
Yeah, I mean, You can never have only the good, right?
You can never have only the good, or any of the good in my case.
Yeah,
I
just
don't
how
have any
life
news I
goes.
want to cover this week. I mean, the ETFs have been strong. That's nice. CZ's getting out of jail. That's nice.
Yeah.
So election stuff back and forth, but nothing too crazy. Is there anything else that's been on your mind or gut feelings about the market? Or, if when this recording ends, we'll be like, hey, dude, so what do you think? Those types of comments. What's top of mind right now for
No,
crypto in general? Big
I,
melt up?
I mean, I'd hope so, but I don't really have anything. Like I'm hoping for up. It looks like it wants to go up to me, um, but other than that, I just don't fucking know. Like that's as far as my knowledge goes, which is very
Nice.
limited. I'm just playing the Wukong game.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yes, Wukong, yeah.
Yeah, fucking great. Love it. And just looking at the market from time to time. I have learned on my vacation that you really don't need to look at the market for it to do what you need it to do.
Yeah, apparently.
Um, so I'm just going to keep those and try to ignore the market as much as possible. Got other things on my mind anyway. And
Me mostly.
exactly.
Understandable.
um,
Awesome.
but
Well,
yeah.
it's nice to be back. My back hurts from carrying this show while you're away, but
Ah,
some the
I'll pick
support
up the
team is
slack.
here. Yeah, you'll pick up the slack. If anyone wants me to do that post high time frame candle close daily open entry whatever discussion on Monday, please let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this show, my shitty beeping aside, for which I apologize, let us know in the comments as well. Before you leave, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, thank you to Woo for supporting the show. They've launched a very interesting social trading where you can actually counter trade the people trading there as well. I think it's got a lot of potential to evolve, not just into like copying or counter trading influencers, but for people to just post strategies there. Like, oh, this is like like a momentum trading altcoin strategy, or it's a meme coin short strategy, or it's like a trend following whatever strategy. And then considering you can counter trade it, it really opens up some interesting avenues for doing a lot of sort of outsourcing a lot of your trading, right? Like, let's say you're very bearish on the market trending, then you just find a trending strategy and counter trade it, or you copy trade a momentum strategy, or if you're like, you can set up pair trades if you're bearish or bullish a specific sector. It could well become in a future iteration like a very interesting strategy marketplace. So I might put out a tweet this weekend or something, just kind of outlining it because I genuinely think it's quite interesting. But yeah, check them out by the links in the description below. Don, welcome back and congratulations once again.
Thank you.
And
Thank
to
you.
everyone else, have a wonderful weekend and we'll see you next week.
Bye bye.